What is going on, guys? The 2020 NFL Draft is behind us, and now it's time to look towards the future. More specifically, it's a fun time to project which draft picks will go down as total game changers, and which ones will turn out to be downright regretful. Now, before we start, we'd like to point out that obvious and easy first-round picks like Joe Burrow and Chase Young didn't qualify as greatest picks. Those guys were no-brainers. We're focusing more on value, steals, and high-risk picks that will pay off. Now let's dive into the 5 best and 5 worst NFL draft picks of 2020. Number 5 greatest, Gross-Matos. Many believe the Penn State defensive end would go late in the first round. Instead, Gross-Matos fell to the Carolina Panthers with the number 38 selection in round 2. The Panthers were one of the prime winners of the 2020 draft, and the Gross-Matos selection is a key reason why. They lost Pro Bowl linebacker Luke Kuechly to retirement, but Gross-Matos has the personality and skill set to take over as the new leader on the Carolina defense. GM Marty Herney was a genius for using every single draft pick on defense. They already took care of the offensive side of the ball by signing Teddy Bridgewater and Robbie Anderson in free agency. Gross-Matos has all the main tools you look for in a pass rusher, and he could be a dark horse candidate for Defensive Rookie of the Year as a 2-time first-team All-Big Ten selection. He joins a team that recorded 53 sacks in 2019, second most in the NFL. Luckily for Carolina, other teams were focused on going after the stud offensive tackles and receivers this year. That allowed Gross-Matos to fall right into their laps. He's the type of player they'll need against Drew Brees, Tom Brady, and Matt Ryan, so we absolutely love this pick. Just watch Gross-Matos outperform his draft position. Number 5 worst, Jalen Reagor. Now, for their sake, we're glad the Philadelphia Eagles addressed the wide receiver position in this first round. What we don't like was the decision to take TCU wideout Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson of LSU. Countless mock drafts had the Eagles taking Jefferson, and for good reason. Simply put, the 6'1", 202-pound Jefferson has a greater skill set and a much higher ceiling than Reagor. Reagor isn't going to provide that. He's got a nice set of wheels and all, but don't the Eagles already have Deshaun Jackson? So instead, Jefferson goes to a Minnesota Vikings team that has continually challenged Philly for playoff positioning in the NFC over the past few years. The Eagles were in desperate need of finding a new leader for their aging, injury-prone receiving core, and I can't help but think that Jefferson, not Reagor, was better suited for that role. And even if Reagor was their man, you have to think that the Eagles could have traded down to get him. Oh, and that Jalen Hurts selection in round 2, it was incredibly uncalled for. Yo, you guys almost killed EDP.
What the wrong with this? Hate him. I hate you.
Howie Roseman is one of the best in the business when it comes to drafting and finding good value, but we're already highly discouraged with this 2020 showing. Number 4 greatest, Jacob Eason. The Washington signal caller was always going to be better off learning behind a seasoned veteran for a couple of years, buying enough time for him to be groomed as a future starter. Sure enough, Eason landed with the Indianapolis Colts after a very long wait, and you can see the fear in his face when you were watching the draft. Oh, poor guy. His girlfriend kept trying to egg him on and be there for him, and he just didn't want to hear it. He got drafted though, so that's good. They selected him 122nd overall in round 4, often regarded as a top 5 quarterback in the 2020 class. Eason now gets to learn from Pro Bowler and future Hall of Famer Phillip Rivers, whom the Colts signed in free agency. Rivers sounds keen on only playing 1 or 2 more years, so Eason should get time to develop. He'll also learn from one of the game's most brilliant offensive minds in head coach Frank Reich. The 6'6", 227-pound Eason has the ideal size teams are looking for in a quarterback, at least these days. But he's in the perfect situation to refine those skills. And better yet, there will be no shortage of weapons for Eason when he takes over as the starter in Indy. T.Y. Hilton could still be around, while fellow rookies Michael Pittman Jr. and Jonathan Taylor and 2019 second-round pick Paris Campbell should all be entering their primes. Oh, and he'll have arguably the best offensive line in the league. All the weapons are there. The coach is there. The future Hall of Famer to learn behind is there. So Eason was a home run pick for the Colts. Don't be shocked if he eventually becomes one of the top draft steals, not only from the 2020 draft, but from the entire 2020 decade. And if I'm wrong, then come back here and roast me. Number 4 worst, Cole Kmet. Chicago Bears general manager Ryan Pace is obsessed with his tight ends for whatever reason. He overpaid for past his prime veteran Jimmy Graham in free agency. We thought he would maybe stop there, but nope. With the number 43 selection, Pace reached for Notre Dame tight end Cole Kmet. The pick gave the Bears 10 tight ends on their roster. You only need like 3 or 4 max these days. We don't really dislike Kmet, but we do dislike the Bears' obsession with tight ends. That's weird. And we can't help but think that Chicago could have easily traded down to nab Kmet later. Kmet was arguably the best tight end prospect entering the draft, but the Bears don't really need him. And how is he going to reach his full potential with Mitch Trubisky? I mean, they better hope Nick Foles has some more magic in him. And tight ends are always tough to project these days. Few people saw Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Gates, George Kittle, and Travis Kelce emerging as superstars. But then you have hyped up prospects like Eric Ebron, OJ Howard, Kobe Fleener, and Tyler Eifert, all of whom haven't actually hit their full potentials. Just because the hype on Kmet is high doesn't mean he'll produce at the professional level. It's like when the Colts drafted wide receiver Philip Dorsett in the first round back in 2015. They already had too many pass catchers, so why add an unneeded luxury to the bottom of your depth chart when you could address other areas of need? Bears gonna be Bears, I guess. Number 3 greatest, Zach Bond. The Saints didn't have any serious and pressing needs. They are perhaps the deepest and most talented team in football, but adding another linebacker to complement Demario Davis was probably always going to be a priority for GM Mickey Loomis. Luckily for the Saints, they found their guy in Wisconsin linebacker Zach Bond with the 74th overall selection in round 3. He should have been a first or second round selection, but teams were scared off by a diluted sample at the NFL Combine. We know it doesn't take much for draft prospects to scare teams off these days. Remember when teams were scared to take Marshawn Lattimore in 2017, allowing the Saints to snag him with the 11th pick? We'd say that turned out pretty well, so why can't Bond deliver similar results for the team that took a chance on him? Bond will be a tremendous fit in Dennis Allen's defense, one that has suffered too many late game breakdowns over the years. He could very well go down as the top linebacker of this draft class. And alongside Davis, they will instantly form one of the league's best duos. This was the perfect win-now selection for the Saints, who are running out of time to win another Super Bowl with Drew Brees. Needless to say, a lot of teams are going to regret letting Bond join an already stacked New Orleans squad. Number 3 worst, Jalen Hurts. He was either going to be taken way too early or he was going to be a potential late round steal for some lucky team. In the end, it turned out to be the former for the Oklahoma product. We really don't know what the Eagles are doing here, taking a quarterback with the number 53 selection in round 2. Yeah, what? You're worried about Carson Wentz's health? Then you should have signed Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, or traded for somebody like Andy Dalton. Or they could have waited and drafted a quarterback in a later round. Jacob Eason and Jake Fromm would have been nice picks. Chances are the Eagles will use Hurts in various gadget and trick plays. We can expect a rise in Wildcat formations as well, so maybe Hurts will be a serviceable weapon in Doug Peterson's offense. But still, prayers up to EDP. But even then, why take this guy in round 2 if you're not putting him on the field every play? Wentz signed a $128 million extension in 2019, so he's not going anywhere. Unless Hurts one day replaces Wentz and successfully wins the starting job, or unless he becomes a big-time playmaker as a running back or wide receiver. This will go down as one of the worst selections in the Howie Roseman era. Peterson better get creative with his new quarterback, or he's screwed. Number 2 greatest, CeeDee Lamb. You know you have an elite skill set and ultra-high ceiling when you're considered a steal. When you went 17th overall, Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, and Henry Ruggs were the big 3 wide receiver prospects. One can easily argue that Lamb is the most talented and the most likely to succeed, and yet Ruggs and Jeudy both went before him. We're very sure that Jerry Jones didn't have Lamb on his wish list, because there's no way the Dallas Cowboys owner could have imagined he'd be there. Wide receiver was the least of Dallas' needs at the draft, but Jones knew he couldn't pass on this world-class talent. Lamb will join Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup to form the undisputed top wideout trio in the NFL. They should give opposing defenses fits alongside Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, and one of the strongest offensive lines in football. For all we know, he'll overtake Cooper as the top receiver in Big D. I mean, kind of unlikely, but it's possible. Number 2 worst, Damon Arnette. There was no shortage of high-quality cornerback prospects in the 2020 draft class. But when Roger Goodell announced that Damon Arnette was going to the Las Vegas Raiders at number 19 overall, it was hard for anybody to get excited about that pick. Needless to say, it was a huge reach by John Gruden and Mike Mayock, who also reached big time for Cleveland Farrell last year. Arnette was projected to be a 2nd or 3rd round pick, and certainly Las Vegas could have traded down to get him. Trayvon Diggs, for example, would have been a much smarter pick than Arnette, and the former fell all the way to Dallas at 51. Arnette just isn't as polished as the other top corners. Guys like Jeffrey Okudah, CJ Henderson, AJ Terrell, and all the other ones that I don't feel like naming. But why are you reaching for a guy when you know you can get him later? The Raiders are making nice progress in their rebuild. We like the Henry Ruggs selection, but why do you reach this early for a guy who's probably not top 5 at his position in this class? Number 1 greatest, Tua Tagovailoa. You may find it boring that we named the top 5 selection as the greatest pick of the draft, but hear me out, and if you don't want to, fast forward. The Alabama product could have been the 1st overall pick if not for a serious hip injury that ended his final college season early. His overall skill set is ridiculous, and the Miami Dolphins haven't had a top-tier quarterback since Dan Marino retired 2 decades ago. After mistakenly choosing Dante Culpepper over Drew Brees in 2006, the Dolphins decided not to make the same error. They didn't want to let a potential franchise-changing quarterback get away from them, regardless of his injury history. If Tagovailoa stays healthy, he'll be the best pick in franchise history. All the tools are there for him to take this mediocre franchise to a new era of glory. It's going to be a lot easier with Tom Brady out of the way too. We love the new culture that head coach Brian Flores set in 2019. They did pretty good for like having no one. Like a lot of people just didn't want to be on the team to begin with because they knew they were tanking for Tua, and they still actually ended up doing pretty decent. Not bad. Again, for what they had to work with. A lot of the players refused to actually tank for Tua. Tua just happened to land in their laps despite them having the 5th overall pick. Now Tua probably won't start right away, which would be the wise call. Let Ryan Fitzpatrick create some more Fitz magic until Tua is ready. Ignore his health concerns. Remember when people thought that Breeze was done in 06? Or when everyone wrote off Peyton Manning in 2012? Quarterbacks are absolute warriors. Tua's gonna be fine, and he's gonna make the Dolphins a perennial playoff team, which is pretty exciting. Come back to this video in 3 years and tell us how we called it. Or, you know, if we're wrong, then roast us again. What are you gonna do? Number 1 worst, Jordan Love. The Utah State quarterback was always going to be a reach if he went in round 1 or early in round 2. Sure enough, somebody bit, and the team that bit really caught us by surprise. The Green Bay Packers, owners of Aaron Rodgers, traded up and took Love with the 26th overall selection. Can I get a what the f***?
What the f*** happened? What happened?
Alright, I have just like a few questions for the Packers. 1, why trade up for such a reach? 2, why are you taking a quarterback in the first round? In case you missed it, Rodgers helped the Packers reach the NFC Championship game last year. Everybody knew that he needed just 1 or 2 more reliable pass catchers to take Green Bay over the top. And yet, Devin Funchess was the best guy they could find in free agency. Then entering the draft, it was expected by everyone that Green Bay would use their first round pick to grab a receiver. But instead, they passed on many quality wideouts in favor of a guy who won't realistically start for 3 or more years. Why not try to win now with Rodgers, who plans to play well into his 40s? If you knew you were going to draft a successor, why didn't you get some better receivers in free agency? It's a pure insult to Rodgers. It's like complete disrespect. I mean, like, is this their way of telling Rodgers they're ready to move on without him? Aaron Rodgers. You're telling Aaron Rodgers you're ready to move on. He went to the NFC Championship game last year. What? So our guess is Rodgers won't retire a Packer. And this pick is all the evidence we need. Green Bay seems more interested in winning with Love in the future than winning with Aaron Rodgers right now. That's certainly no way to treat your Super Bowl winning 2-time MVP quarterback. Which 2020 NFL draft picks do you think were the best and the worst? Join me in the comments section below. Make sure to follow myself and TPS on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. We are on everything. Go find us. Go sub, go follow, go do that. If you like this video, give it a like. It takes 1 click down below, and subscribe to TPS. We post videos every day. Every day's a new video. Of course, thank you so much for watching and Biondo. My knee.